I'm saying is that seems to be, we are listening this, I'm listening to this for more than 40 years, that we have not been able to encourage young people to join the police forces. And the numbers are still, you just said that a little while ago, that you can probably count them in your hands. So there is something that we have not been able to encourage black people, right? We have maybe made some progress in terms of the Asians, but we certainly haven't done that. So there must be something that we need to do to think of an initiative where people tend to have a trust to be able to say, well, I would join, but I don't trust that I'll be treated as equal.
And that's part of the event that we've got on Monday, because we've been trying and trying and trying, but you're right, we have not broken that issue. And that's where the event on Monday will be really useful. Some of the work, as I've said, that Dave does, Montel does, with young black people in particular, trying to build those bridges. But you are right, we have not made progress as we should have in that area.
Ask you, in terms of some of the incident, which is pretty horrific. I attended some years ago the incident, you remember, with a person with a disability in Highbury Road, which when I saw that, I went to that hearing, was pretty horrific. So those incidents like that, really, when people see that either in the press or on the TV, are the one that may be only one incident, but it does discourage people to say, well, are they really all the good work, or 98%, is rubbed off because people think that's all what the policing is all about. Am I right?
The other side of that is that we will deal with anybody who does not adhere to our police professional standards of behaviour. And I don't want people like that in our organisation. In that case, those two officers involved are no longer within the organisation. And we do that openly, and we do that transparently, and we communicate that so that people in our communities can see that we want to change. We want to change the culture within policing to make sure that we are more inclusive, we are more representative of our communities, and turn that around. But once again, similar to the comment I made previously, we can't do it alone. We need the support of our partner agencies, of which we get great support. But most importantly, we need the support of our communities themselves.
Montel, can I ask you, in terms of your experience as an independent chair, do you feel that we are now in terms of the representation and seeing the improvement in policing behavior, or the policing in general has improved considerably? Do you feel that we are on the right track?
Yes, Councillor. So there's a couple of points. So first of all, I devised a tool which is a traffic light system: green 1, 2, and 3, amber 4, 5, 6, red 7, 8, 9. Green is good. 1 is perfect, nothing wrong, and that's good, and that's what we want you to do. 2 and 3 is good but advisory. Amber is not quite sure, or there's training needs. Red is not acceptable for different reasons, for different proportions. Now, when we started off, lots of stop and sit encounters were either amber, a few greens, and there were quite a few reds. What we're finding now is the vast majority in Bedfordshire, with Bedfordshire officers, because not every officer is a Bedfordshire officer, and there's difference when Hertfordshire officers come into Bedfordshire. But with Bedfordshire officers, predominantly green in Bedfordshire. So we can see that direction of shift over the years. That's number one. So we measure 2 things. 1, stop and sit in of itself, and number 2, were there reasonable grounds in the first place? What was the reason for that interaction, which is really important. And that's also the quality of the encounter. So I've done lots of training, and the panel's given feedback to Sean's officers. And one of the things that we've talked to them about is how you use your voice and how you interact with members of our community, no matter who they are, to ensure they are treated fairly. Now, if you're investigating something, remember, you are leaving an impression. We want you to leave an impression that doesn't damage trust and confidence. And then to your earlier point, just two quick points on what you said before. First of all, in 2010, roughly between 1% and 2% of officers were black. In 2020, despite a large increase across the country, just under 1% were black. So it didn't change and it's not moved. Your other question in terms of what do the community feel and think, especially young people, and you probably know I do lots of work with lots of young people right across the whole of Luton, and I've done that for many years. The vast majority of young black teenagers, male and female, distrust the police. They are quite far away. It's very easy for us to engage our Asian friends and colleagues, and we have quite a lot of Asian friends and colleagues, and our white friends and colleagues into community scrutiny, but we do far more to engage young black males and mixed race males and females.
Can I ask you, in terms of the figure that you're more 4 times more likely to be stopped and searched? Now we've been hearing that for years. Nothing has changed, has it?
That has actually changed. So what's happened is when I became the chair in 2016, across the country, all over, you were between 8 and 9 times. That was in Bedfordshire, it's nationally. I then benchmarked it to our neighbouring forces, Leicestershire, Hertfordshire, and Milton Keynes is called Thames Valley. So all of them were 8 to 9 times more likely. So at that time, again, working with Sean and his then colleagues, we did lots of training and advice and guidance. So 2 things changed. 1, the quality of the encounter, number 1. Number 2, the disproportionality dropped to when it was about 2018 actually, it dropped down to you were 3 times more likely to be stopped and searched in Bedfordshire. And then it dropped down to 2 times more likely. It slightly crept up again more recently, but when it was 2 times, that was the lowest in the country.
Can I just, in terms of these 4 times likely, is that because whenever there is a knife crime or something really horrific, is that anything to do with that?
No.
I think, can we reassure the public that that is not the case? This is just in general, is it?
Yeah, so basically, I can talk about stop and search because we've done that for a long time. With use of force, we are trying to find the drivers for that. Some of the answers have actually been put on the presentation, but the first thing I'd just like to share with everybody is, first of all, the vast majority of officers don't do any stop and searches, or they do very few. That's about 2/3 of police officers. That's number 1. Number 2, 20 police officers do more than 1/4 of every stop and search. So that's very small numbers. So that's the key thing to remember there. In terms of when stop and search is carried out, between 7 and 8 times out of every 10, nothing is found. When we think about knife crime and offensive weapons in total, only about 2% are things found. So that's not one of the drivers. There's a number of other factors which I put onto the presentation.
My last question to both of you, whichever one of you wants to answer it. In terms of the prevention of the criminal activity, is this stop and searches had any positive impact in terms of preventing the crime?
Stop and search is primarily an investigation tool, and that's what it's there for. And one of the biggest educational and raising awareness parts that we encountered when we worked with the scrutiny panel was just to highlight 3 things. So when an officer is confronted with an incident, they can either do nothing, they can arrest, or they can stop search. And when we use that rationale in terms of the incidents they are attending, that's why stop and search is such an effective tool.
Thank you.
Councillor Jabir Hussain.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Salim, did you want to come back on something? I think I might give her the opportunity first because I think she may have wanted to
I did. I wanted to jump in, but Mahmoud just kept going and he asked the questions I wanted to ask and you answered. I think for me, it just takes a big headline, doesn't it? And we've had lots of negative headlines with respect to the police. I mean, only a few days ago. And that face-to-face interaction is gold dust for our communities. It's, the event that you've got next week. I'm glad you said you're going to do recruitment and, get people in through the front door. That's the main thing, isn't it? And I think we all play a part. We're all part of the community. I've had people who roll their eyes at me and say, what are the police playing at? This is basic good manners. It's basic. And I think, well, we're all culpable. We all fall short in every community. So whether it's the council, the police, and it's just reminding people to not objectify the police. It's very easy to do, especially when you can't answer when there's a headline that talks about the police without actually talking about the bad apples in the police. So it's just, I wanted to dive in, but like I said, I think my questions have been covered. So
thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Councillor Jabir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your reports. Well, first things first. If I was a cat and I had 9 lives, I think in one of my lives I would have wanted to join the police force because that was a bit of a passion of mine when I was a kid. Obviously, other things have taken over. I suppose my first question is to you, Assistant Chief Constable. Yesterday was International Women's Day, and the theme was embracing equity. So this is my own personal view. Do correct me if I'm wrong. I think at this moment in time in Bedfordshire Police, there is an equity when it comes to female officers, because at this moment in time, I don't see any, particularly in the senior leadership team, any female officers particularly from ethnic communities. Is that correct, or have I just made a statement that's incorrect?
I'm glad you finished it with females of an ethnic background, and you are totally correct.
Okay, that's the first thing. So I'd like to know, what are you doing in terms of that? Because census figures for Luton that were released last year, half the population is Luton is female, and obviously it's about ensuring that when we're recruiting, we are also trying to reach out to females, particularly from ethnic communities, and I'd like to see Bedfordshire Police do more work that they're currently doing with women's organisations, because that's something that I don't see often enough happening, and that's having spoken to local communities within Luton, and obviously I'm somebody who tries to get about quite a bit. My other question is, there are people from communities, from the African Caribbean communities, who want to join the police force, young people. I mean, I can give you from the top of my head about 3 or 4 from the African communities, but again, this is my own personal views, I like to see Bedfordshire Police connecting with other organisations and other community leaders, again going back to the census totals, because what I do sometimes find is that Bedfordshire Police tends to deal with the same individuals, whereas Luton is diverse, super diverse. There's lots of communities that are that we need, obviously we are firstly proud of, but I'd like to see a bit more work done in that regard. And here I'd like to pay credit to the community policing team for the excellent work that they do, and also the community cohesion team, because they are the biggest success story of Bedfordshire Police, and I really do mean that. And the way they go out and about and building bridges with all communities and being there for them and being part of the community, which is absolutely important. So that is something I really would like something addressing, please. And the other thing that I did also want to ask is, this is of Montel actually. Hopefully next time around, when you come to give us, or whoever gives an update for next year, I'd like to see a slide where you do give us a bit of an update as to where we're at, as to where we're at, and obviously what progress has been made, and also how we go about, what kind of work you are doing to resolve those, and obviously, how, and what issues that there are, so that we can obviously get a bit of a better idea. That's the only thing I would say in that regard.
I would love to do that. Thank you.
Councillor, clearly my long-term memory is better than my short-term, because I've probably forgotten 2 out of the 4 or 5 questions that you asked. So I'll try and address each of them, but please come back to me if I've missed any of them. First one was in relation to female representation within policing, and especially at the higher ranks. Nationally, in Bedfordshire, we are above the national average in terms of female representation within our organisation, and we've always been a leader in that front. So on that basis, across the board, I'm really pleased and proud of where we are. We have always been well represented at the higher ranks. We've had 2 chief constables who were females in the past. We've got currently an assistant chief constable, and we've got 2 chief superintendents and a number of superintendents. So again, we are where we hope to be. Where we are lacking is women of colour in those areas. And again, that's a lot of the work that we're doing internally, externally, and within our communities. We have a very vibrant and well-supported women's network. We have got a very vibrant and well-supported women of colour in policing support group to our organisation. But again, we really appreciate that this is further work that we need to do. We've got programs internally in terms of fast track and supportive programs open to all of our officers, but working with the College of Policing, the people who get priority status there are females and people of colour. So we are doing a lot of work in this space. There's still so much more to do. The gap in relation to supporting those within the community, our door is always open for people to come and say, I want to work with you, I want to help you, I want to help you reach out to further groups. Please come straight into me. You referenced our community team, and in particular, our excellent community cohesion team. They're the ones who signpost into the workforce development team, those individuals and groups who want to work with policing to help solve some of these wicked issues. So please, the offer is there. If there's groups, people who can help to influence and shape policing going into the future, I want to work with them. Our organisation wants to work with them.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I will definitely be taking you up on that offer. It's good that you mentioned, the senior leadership team here. Obviously, there's been, fairly few changes at the top. Obviously, we've had a new chief constable, and obviously your assistant, and so on. And for me, and I suppose from a community, Luton community as a whole point of view, and perhaps also across Bedfordshire, we just want a bit of reassurance that Bedfordshire Police is stable at this moment in time, in terms of leadership and going forward. And also, on the point of recruitment, I do believe last year and the year before an issue was raised with regards to, when you have this fast track retention, the problem is in filling the gaps with new entrants coming in. And obviously, I obviously do want reassurance that, there are police officers that are out there obviously able to do the day job, and they are there, not just obviously interested in fast tracking their own careers, which means that we do have a bit of a gap when it comes to, the day-to-day policing job.
Okay. Because of uplift, we've got a responsibility to reach certain numbers, and by the end of the year, financial year, so by next month, we will have 1,456 police officers in Bedfordshire Police. That's the highest number we've ever had. So that should reassure you on that point. In terms of stability, the Chief Constable took up his post on the 3rd of January, and unless the representative of the Office and Police Crime Commission is going to tell me any different, he's there for probably 4 years. Deputy Chief Constable was appointed probably about a month ago, and I've got no doubt he will be there for quite some time as well. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of stability at the top level of policing in Bedfordshire.
That's useful to know. And so to the representative of the Police and Crime Commissioner, one of the biggest problems has always been with Bedfordshire Police is funding. We bang on about it, so I'd like to know what is being done, especially from the Police and Crime Commissioner side, to ensure that Bedfordshire Police gets the proper funding that it needs to carry on with the important task of protecting the communities.
Councillor, the deputy.
I'm more than happy to answer that, Chair. Absolutely. No, I'm more than happy to engage. So I'll start with police funding. The government have committed in this session of Parliament to do a full review of police funding. They have started that level of engagement. I know there will be 2 periods of consultation on that. We would hope that as part of all of that, that they will recognise that Bedfordshire policing as a whole is funded inadequately. They have recognised that in the past with the number of grants that have been provided towards Bedfordshire Police, but what we need to do is ensure that those are actually built into the funding formula going forward. So I would hope when they start those consultations that this council, along with all others, will feed into that as well. I'll make a number of other comments as well, if I may, Chair, in terms of this evening. In terms of young black males joining the police, I think we need to remember we have got the first black police and crime commissioner in the country. And I think Festus is really keen to act as a role model for young black males and for young black ladies to get them into the police. And I think the fact that he's there is something that we need to leverage going forward to basically try and close this gap that we're sitting in. In the presentation that was given this evening, it alluded to the fact that oversight of stop and search and use of force, etc., now sits with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. We take this extremely seriously, and every single member of the OPC's office yesterday went through a training programme on stop and search, and all the things that Montiel was talking about, rag ratings, etc. We watched some of the videos that the stop and search panel would review, and we actually came to the same conclusions. And I think some of the next steps that we look to actually deal with this, because every single one of those is viewed as a learning exercise. It's not about exiting the people who do a bad job. It's about retraining and making sure they do a good job going forward. But we are looking at actually doing peer review. Officers actually looking at it going, actually, a bit of a finger pointing exercise, which is provide some honesty to that. And I know people say, well, actually, people want to protect their own. But what we are starting to see from that, and some of the trials that I know Chief Inspector Hobbs has done on that, is actually people getting honest feedback. And I think that's really, really important. As Montiel alluded to, though, it's about trust. The officers going through this need to trust the force. They need to trust the panel that are looking at to make sure that they get the support. It's very difficult when you're walking into some of these circumstances to actually get it right every single time. And that's why Montiel's got a rag rating with red, amber, green, etc. And we want everybody to get to green, but there is learning, and people will learn and engage through that as they go through it. In terms of the comments about engagement, etc., I was extremely pleased to be invited to the Heroes of Biscot Awards last Friday evening. And I think the level of engagement that the community said they were having with the police, and the fact that the community gave awards to some of their local police officers, etc., I think was an exemplar of what is actually being achieved and what we need to copy out to other parts of Luton and Bedfordshire as a whole. So, thank you.
So if I can just finish off on a quick point of return, and then I will finish. Well, firstly, congratulations on your role, Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. I didn't realise who you were, but now I do, and we look forward to working with you. And you're absolutely right on the last point about the community engagement, because there are, I've seen it myself, that the Bedfordshire Police, does have very good relationships with certain communities, but as always the case, there will be some hard-to-reach communities. And this is where I suppose the role of councillors also does come in, to work in partnership with Bedfordshire Police to enable them to, reach out to those hard-to-reach communities and develop those relationships. And obviously, this is where our brilliant social justice team comes in as well. So thank you.
Councillor Agbury, can we make it questions, please?
I was going to ask a question. Now I'm going to make comment. My question is: you said earlier on that Bedfordshire Police is not reflecting the community it serves. Whose responsibility is that to make sure that we reflect the community we serve?
Very simply, all of ours.
Sorry?
All of ours.
No, in terms of the structure that you have. I mean, I don't know how to talk in abstract terms.
Right.
I wish you had your organogram here.
Yeah. So
tell me, in terms of the tiers you have in the police force, the first tier, how many people there? How does that reflect the community? The second tier, the third tier, I can't see anything. I would have wanted to see that for me to be able to know that, okay, this is where we are in the next 3 years, this is where we're going to be, because this is talking to me about Bedford Police Race Equality Action Plan. The action plan should tell me what is current and what you're going to do and how you're going to achieve that. For me, I haven't seen the organogram, so I'll start with people who make their decisions. That's where the power is, let's be honest. If it's not reflecting the community, the power is retained at those at the top. If it's all white, that's why it is. It's not going to change. Who is responsible for that? That's what I want to know. Who recruits the top people, the middle people, and those who make their decision? Where is that person? Is he here? I want to speak to that person.
Well, Councillor, there are two things. And please feel free. I've been a resident of this county for nearly 50 years. I've been in policing for 30 years. This is my community. I'm always happy to help. So, Councillor, please, if you want to get hold of me and we could to discuss how we can improve policing in our county, I'm always happy to do that. We're not going to solve it in the next 20 minutes or so. But just to answer a couple of your questions, in terms of who recruits the Chief Constable, that's the Office of the Police Crime Commissioner. It's the PCC recruits the Chief Constable. You talk about who's at the top. We have what's called a force executive team, of which I am a member. I want our force to be representative of our community, of my community. My family are of Asian origin, still live in this community, in this county, in this community. So it's all of our responsibility. And when you say you want to ask direct questions, you can ask them of me as a direct representative of the Chief Constable.
I'm here to tell us the plus. We represent the Chief Constable. So in the last 4 years, how have things changed in terms of the makeup of the top tier? And in terms of this action plan, how long is it going to take? Is there a timeline?
Well, if I go back to my introduction, in 30 years, we've made little progress.
I won't be here in the next 30 years. I want to know what's going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, medium to long term, which is 5 to 10 years. What are you going to do to change the face of the police?
And that's all the stuff I was talking about when I briefed in relation to the race action plan. And the meeting we have on Monday is crucial with our black members of our community to take stock as to where we are, what we are doing, what we need to do differently, what else we can do. That's critical in terms of success going forward.
So in terms of the challenges before you're going to meet tomorrow, what do you think the barriers are? You must know what the barriers are to not being able to get people to the top.
I'll tell you one of the barriers, Councillor, now that you've asked me. Have you recommended policing to anybody that you know of the black community?
A lot of them.
And why won't they join?
They don't get to even get shortlisted to get to the top. They see the top all white, not representing them. There's no hope.
Councillor, if I had a mirror, I'd be looking at myself and telling you I am not white.
I'm just telling you the population is not being reflected. You've said that. I want to see the change. How are you going? The challenge is the change you want to bring in. How is that? You, one person or two people being there, it's not enough.
Councillor Agbley.
I want to see the change, yeah? That's my question. I'm asking a question, Chair.
Yes, but he's actually said what he is doing. He's taking stock on Monday night.
But I'm here today. Monday night, I won't be there. I want to know what the plans are.
Time to go into
Chair, can I just quickly add something, if I may? What the other Assistant Chief Constable said is that it's all our responsibilities. And let me just tell you how I and the panel discharge part of that responsibility. There is also a police recruitment team, and they're actually open to being invited in to community groups, to community events, and to schools and colleges. And what I find is that virtually every week, they're happy to come. And actually, the senior leadership team, including the Chief Constable, Deputy Chief Constable, and the Assistant Chief Constable, if I and other people ask them to come, to both the black community, to the Asian community, to the white community, to any community event, I always get at least one senior officer, but also the recruitment team are happy to come. Now, that's the starting point, because what we find is obviously the community trusts me rather than a lot of the police directly. But it's about breaking down those barriers. You're right, it does take time, but I think we've all got a role to play. And I think over the past year, we've started to move in that direction.
So I keep hearing this, it takes time. My colleague here said 40 years is still no change. You're going to be saying it takes time, it takes time. What time? I haven't got time.
Councillor, if we go, Councillor,
I need to ask the question. I want answers, please. Not stop, please. I want answers.
Councillor, you talk about time. Last week was a youth conference that was held by the Office of the Police Crime Commission. One of those days was dedicated to Luton schools. You are a huge influencer within Luton. Were you there?
It's not for me to be there. I can't be everywhere. My question is, what's the police doing to change the face of policing?
And I've told you time and time again, and I'm happy to repeat that. I'm happy to take the time to speak with you personally so that we can progress with other urgent matters that we need to discuss today.
So when are we going to see the organogram for the police? I haven't seen the organogram.
Councillor Agbury, this is going round in circles.
Yeah, I want to see the organogram so that I can ask questions. I'm just asking. Are we going to see the organogram so that we know what the levels are? If you want to change, that's where we need to tackle.
I can send you the organogram.
Okay.
You'll see the names, but you won't be able to distinguish from the name the individual.
I don't want to say that. I want to see the people. You said reflecting. Reflection is what you see. Yeah. So they have to have their pictures and their.
And I concede we haven't got it right. I concede that. Okay. But what we are doing is working towards being more representative of our communities.
Okay, that's fine. So in terms of the previous years, what have we done to retain those that you had? How many black people have left the police force? Do you know, and why they've left?
I know why they've left, because everybody who leaves the organisation has an exit interview. How many, off the top of my head, I can't tell you.
Okay. So those are the things I want to see, so that we know there are gaps that we need to fill. If we don't have them here, and I don't want to diminish stop and search, but it's not the top thing that we should be looking at. It's about the power within the police force and who wields that power. And it's within the structures of the police. That's what it is. Decision being made from the top is filtered down. If the top is not changing, like my colleague said, 40 years, we're still going to be here. That's how I see the problem is.
Yeah. Councillor Agbury, can we stop?
Sorry?
Can we stop? Because we're going round in circles.
No, I'm not going round in circles. I just asked about recruitment and retention now.
And you've made your point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one more question. So in terms of your vision, maybe, are you a microcosm of this document? Because when I read it, it says questions to be asked to Luton inclusion and stuff. Can we ask questions about the vision here that you can answer? Because I've seen the vision here. Anyway, I ask the questions first. It says, our vision is for a police force that is anti-racist and trusted by the black people. What was the vision before?
You're reading from the Police Race Action Plan, correct? Yeah. There wasn't a vision in relation to the Police Action Plan before because it didn't exist. Bedfordshire Police has a vision. Policing in general has a mission and a purpose. This document came into being last year.
Okay.
Because we recognise that we have got so much more to do.
So you're a microcosm of that. So you're going to have to go by this vision. That's my understanding.
No, this vision is in relation to the Police Race Action Plan. Bedfordshire Police, as an organisation and a service that delivers policing for the people of Bedfordshire, has its own vision of policing.
So what's that vision?
Well, the Chief Constable has openly gone out in three key things. We want to create a safe place for our communities, we want to be tough on crime, and we want to be an employer of choice.
So how is...
Chair, I think we've had enough of this. Thank you very much indeed.
I just want to ask a question. How are we going to see that it's going to happen? How many years? You see, if there's no timeline, we can't tell how you're going to achieve your aims. I want to know which timelines you have.
Councillor Ivory, we're back on that question.
No, it's a different question.
You're asking for a timeline. We do need to move forward.
Good night.
Okay. Is there any timeline? Because it's not here.
No. You're asking the same question. Chief Constable answer. There isn't timeline as such. Sorry, I forgot to pick this up. He is saying this is the vision. The first step is actually to talk to the community, see what they're doing wrong, and move forward. Unless you do that, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't do that basic investigation, for want of a better word, you will be, if you don't have that baseline, which they're going to start doing on Monday night, you don't know how long it's going to take. I am correct?
You are, Chair.
Right. With that, I think we should move on. Councillor Wynne, you had, and then I'll take Councillor Wynne's question. And that's
yes, I only just wanted to make one little observation to begin with, and then ask one very simple question. First, the observation. I'm actually very encouraged by what I've heard tonight at this meeting. I was grateful for the response you gave about the involvement of women of colour in senior ranks in the police, because I was pleased to hear the positive answer that you gave to my colleague. So I'm pleased about both of those. My question is, despite my encouragement tonight and despite my personal reactions when I've met your local policing team that I do very regularly, my residents don't have that positive feeling about Bedfordshire Police. They don't feel that they have a responsive force. They don't really understand all of the work that's been going on either within the council or within the police. And the perception of my ward residents is one that the police service is not good. What can we do to try and redress that balance?
There's a number of things, and without doubt, at the moment, policing is under great scrutiny and it's under the microscope. And that's not isolated to certain individual force areas, that's Policing UK. And in part, that does spread in terms of what people think of their local force. However, that won't take away anything that we may not have done to build that trust and confidence and build that reputation of our force in our communities. I know every day the work that Alex's team, and Alex is our Chief Inspector for the Luton area, they do some fabulous work. They really do some great work working with our partners. One of the things we may be guilty of is not showcasing that work enough and making sure we feed back to our communities all that great work. So I will make sure, and as I know Alex does, but maybe we need to put more emphasis on feeding back that good work to counterbalance that negative narrative.
Can I just quickly add to that, just very, very briefly? On that point, we've started in fact, 2 community and police radio shows to showcase the work that many officers, many different departments do within their communities. Just thought I'd add that point.
I'm going to take Councillor Lovell, and that is it. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to tell that you did mention about hard to reach communities and also that the black young people distrust the police, and it's really hard to engage them. So I wanted to find out what is the action, for that, to be able to get to these hard to reach communities and the black, young people, to trust, to build the trust with the police, because obviously, there are, reasons, behind, all of that. And I also wanted to find out that in the stop and search, can you have like workshops that will educate the young people, on responses, when they encounter, the police or the bad cops, because things escalate really, really quickly, from being stopped and, the first question, the second question. I've had experiences from the African community when people have been stopped by the police, and the minute, the first question that comes out and the response, the person might have an accent, straight away leads into immigration. And you will find that you were stopped, for a backlight or whatever, but then, it speedily escalates into an immigration, matter. I've had people who the police have followed them to their houses because they didn't have their passports. I don't carry my passport when I come into town or come into work. So, but if I'm stopped, the police will ask for my passport because I have an accent or I'm black. I'm an immigrant. So, what is the plan?
Thank you very much
to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. So just to take those two questions together, first of all, I do not believe in the term hard to reach. It's about how you reach people and who you reach. I completely accept and get that with especially many black and mixed race young people, they are further away from trust and confidence. So more effort needs to go in. And that's to your next point, in what are those efforts, what are those methods? That comes in to that interactions between the police and the community. So I do work all the time for my own social enterprise, and we're very much closely supported by both Dave Collins' team and Sean Byswick's officers. We go into schools all the time. I've been doing workshops for almost about 10 years now, bringing in police officers with young people into both community groups, schools and colleges. And it aims to do two things. One, teach people about their rights and also about their responsibilities. But the other thing that it does is it demystifies policing. It breaks down those barriers. So quite often, when we do surveys at the start of it, how much do you distrust what do you think of the police? And then that's about trust and confidence. And we find that lack of trust and confidence at the beginning. But Sean has supported us personally quite a lot, and so has his colleagues, as well as he's got a community cohesion team and a recruitment team, all the time making links with schools, colleges, community groups, and they've never once turned us down. They're always coming in and building those trust and confidence. That's the first level, is to demystify the fact that most people's first interaction with the police could be through a stop and search. So we want to change that so that they do see that there's actually lots of different departments. And like, for example, there's the cybercrime unit, there are the domestic violence units, etc. So there's a lot of work that the police family do to help protect people. So that's the first thing. So even if they did have a negative experience, and I tell people, I've not always had positive experiences, but I know there are outstanding individual officers, and they are the exception, not the rule. That's one of the key messages we teach all our young people.
Right. Nicola, you wanted to say something.
If I may, Chair, I think the debate is kind of lively and interesting, is exactly how scrutiny should be. So that's good. And I think Montel hit the nail on the head in relation to rights and responsibilities. And I think we should all hold that in terms of this particular item. But I think what I would like to suggest, Chair, if I may, is that there has been a lot talked about just in this agenda item, from performance through to kind of reflections of who's in the top tiers in Bedfordshire Police. I think for me, one of the things perhaps Scrutiny might want to do is invite the new Chief Constable to a full council meeting, like you've extended the welcome to other Chief Constables over the years, to have that debate and to welcome him as well to Luton more formally. Because I think that would be really useful. Because when we go back to the beginning of the meeting, when you look at the performance of the Community Safety Partnership, Bedfordshire Police being probably the biggest partner, along with the council, you've heard of the great work that's happening in relation to justice. But when you look at the crime stats, they're impressive. The crime is going down overall. Yes, we've got slight increases in some of the crimes against the person, but when you look at serious acquisitive crime, you look at antisocial behaviour, you look at hate crime, it's going down. So actually we should feel confident in Luton that actually things are moving in the right direction. There is absolutely more we all need to do, going back to rights and responsibilities that Montel so poignantly mentioned. But I just wanted to say, could we invite the Chief Constable in when the new administration forms? I think that would be a really good idea.
Can I just see it's just been passed a slip. The new Chief Constable is invited to the 21st of March council meeting. Thank you. Brings it to an end. And the recommendation is the committee is recommended to note the report and comment where appropriate. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for the lively debate. Yes, I know. I'm just thanking the two gentlemen. That's as far as I got. Because I thank you for being so patient. Chief Inspector Alex has. And can I echo what somebody else said about the community policing? I share, they are fantastic.
Thank you.
They tend to go, the ones I know tend to go beyond what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. My name's Alex House. I've been in the seat, the Community Chief Inspector role, for a little over 6 months now. Probably most people recognise me. I have worked here as the inspector in communities. I've worked in Luton on the patrol function, in crime, in counter-terrorism, community safety, even as the airport commander over the last few years. And so it's great to be back, and it is a real privilege to be the community lead for this town. The reason I mention that is because it is this, we talked about stability earlier on, and there is that I take pride in that long-standing connection with Luton that I've had over a long time, and the other roles I've had on the periphery, whether they're public order, working with the football, or the King's visit, and so on. So that was just as a way of introducing myself. If I could have the first or the next slide, please. So just as per the report, and I don't want to labour the report too much if everybody's had a chance to read it, but this was really just kind of the impression I wanted to reassure everybody with, really, was around the fact that this is not just our community team, our hub, which is quite a modest number of people, but they're supported by the cohesion team, who've already been mentioned tonight, who do a fantastic job. And they are a leading light nationally. I can reassure you that people look to our community cohesion team and say, how are you achieving this? Can we learn from that, please? But in addition, we've also got, and we talked about the MAGPAN earlier on, we've got a schools and diversion team that work to support the hub teams as well. And I have to take the opportunity, while I remember, others I will forget, that Dave's MAGPAN team, it was my first meeting that I'll dive into this afternoon, and it is reassuring that everybody who should be there is represented. It's dynamic, it's punchy, and it talks about individuals and provides a bespoke level of interaction, intervention, diversion with everybody pulling together. And I just think it is reassuring, and it's almost a wish that people here could have seen that meeting and the way it rattled through such a lot of big issues and you know, involving parents and things like that that we've already covered. So my hat goes off to Dave and his team. I'm very grateful for the work they do. Which brings me neatly on to my other point, which is that not just the education diversion team, not just the mental health team that works with paramedics within our communities and the police to manage people in crisis and proactively work around those issues. It's also around, you know, that we've got various other units that work pulling towards us, but also the strength is the relationship we have with our partners. We've seen over the last few weeks Adam and his team and myself working around some real anxieties that have been caused around some of the challenges we're seeing around the cohesion aspect of our communities at the moment. And I think there is a real strength and a warm comfort to be taken from having that in place. If I could have the next slide, please. So just building on what I've written onto the report, this was just a visual representation really around how this is the national steer, the guidelines of community policing, and how we're embedding that in our daily business. So we're taking that national guidance and really embedding as well those force priorities as well as our force culture around focus, because we are, and I'll labour this a little bit later, we are so few with so many big issues that we have to have some sort of focus. We can't be everything to everybody, and so protecting the vulnerable, the violence and exploitation, and tackling the that sort of aspect around that, and then obviously ensuring public confidence around what we do is critical, and we can't do that alone. And I'm very grateful for the work we do with our partners to achieve all these things collectively. Next slide, please. So again, I think everybody's stolen my thunder on this one completely. Thanks, Nicola and Adam, from the off. But I've put this up here because it is good news. If we look at that domestic burglary, you're less likely now to be a victim of burglary. You're now less likely to have your car broken into. Yes, robbery is something we need to work on, and actually that increase we have to consider is possibly a result of the pandemic when less people were on the streets. So we've had a previous dip before we're now going back into what was a norm. And possibly even less than before. But if you look at that antisocial behaviour as well, that means you're less likely to have problems with that antisocial behaviour and so on. And so these are good news stories. It does buck that trend that we have this image of doom and gloom. And actually, do you know what? That is something to be celebrated, and maybe we need to tell people more about. Could I have the next slide, please? And again, just one other of note, quite a significant one, I think, and an important one, especially given the issues that I described earlier on, is that our hate crime is down as well, and our success rate in terms of charging around any positive outcomes that we present to the Crown Prosecution is positive as well. I'm actually doing a piece of work with our Crown Prosecution Service. To almost as an internal scrutiny with the experts to say, are we presenting the right things? Should we be presenting more, and are our outcomes about right? And so that's a piece of work that's going on in the background as well. If I could have the next slide as well, please. So this was really I talked about our force priorities and how we're trying to achieve that. And when you consider the size of our relatively small teams in community policing, here are just 9 of the areas we try to keep some focus on, so we have Operation Rome, which is a real focus around patrolling hotspots to prevent serious youth violence, and we've all talked about that as such an important priority for us to prevent issues like that we mentioned with the fatal stabbing of one of our young people in our town some time ago. The Dallow Cares is a really, really important initiative, and something that I would like to see replicated, and something that we will push to do. It needs to be done with great care, because it is so resource intensive for us, our partners and everybody else, that to then try and just blanket spread it across the town would run us risk of then watering it down too much and it not being an effective programme. But actually if we could get ourselves to a stage where we're actually making sure that we've got some long-term solutions and structures in place around Dallow, we can then start to roll it out, risk assessing the areas that are in greatest need, whether we base that on the same criteria as Dallow Cares or other, and then building on that and reinventing that process again for that area, for a different area, but making sure that we don't allow the good work we've done to be unpicked in Dallow. It's about making sure it's sustained. Operation Optons is around our on-street sex trade, which is obviously around a whole host of issues, from the antisocial behaviour, the residents and people who are working in the shops in those areas, to the vulnerabilities and crimes that's connected with the people who perpetrate it. Then we have Operation Foresight, was an intensive piece of work around the town centre, around antisocial behaviour and crime, and something, a big focus of mine, as I'll get to in a moment, for the town, is around the town centre, because it is the hub of the town, and it is the lifeblood of the town. We do consult with communities and priority settings, and one of our challenges, and we've mentioned it before already tonight, certainly over there with the councillor over there, was actually selling what we do as a police force, as a partnership in terms of community safety and crime reduction and so forth, is such a challenge, because to reach everybody, we need so many different forums, which requires so many different platforms and quite a lot of work to do that. And we are probably our own worst enemy by not, selling what we do and celebrating that as much as we should do. Engagement and cohesion. Again, the work that very small team of cohesion officers do is, like I say, absolutely brilliant, and something that should be celebrated. Operation NOLA focuses on our vulnerable people who are being cocooned. For those of you not sure of that term, it's where basically the vulnerable are preyed upon in their homes, and we work with our partners again to make sure that we take positive and swift action to address those issues. Project Firefly is a personal one of mine, which is around addressing violence, in particular male perpetrated violence against women and girls in the nighttime economy, to make it safer. There's a lot of money that we campaign work around the communications, the engagement with our businesses, and the operational delivery around that's going on to make the streets of Luton safer, and hopefully make the nighttime economy more thriving and appealing to promote the town. Also, the work we've got around a priority antisocial behaviour team to really beat those quality of life issues. And so they're just some of the areas. Again, you could probably list many others that we need to remember to focus on, and actions we need to do. Taking out drug dealers and addresses that cause the most harm in our communities. But this is some of the focus we try to maintain. If I could have the next slide, please. So the challenges we have, and I thought, I'm not a fan of wordy slides, but really, and again, it touches a little bit upon what we've said today already. We have a huge number of demands placed upon us that outweigh our capacity and our numbers of officers and partners. There's so few of us, but so many people to reach. When you consider the number of officers, and actually when you talk about the relationships, whether this is around the recruitment of black youth into the policing, or whether it's, again, just engaging with people, we look at the numbers of community police officers, and we're talking around, we're not talking, 50 or more, we're talking about much smaller numbers. And as a result of that, we have to bear in mind that actually to build that trust, to build those relationships takes time. Any relationship, whether it's with policing or with friends, partners, colleagues, it takes time, and we have to build that. And with so few people to reach so many, there is our biggest challenge. And so that's something that we work on, and that's where the effectiveness of our cohesion team works. Some of the most impactful other priorities, again, I've mentioned around the issues around serious youth violence and vulnerability, and how do we, every person, every child who is on that edge, as that cliff edge, as Dave mentioned, needs a bespoke, a different type of response from us and our partners. And again, it's around making sure we tackle all of these things, being all these things to all people. So the challenge is really around numbers, and it's around making sure that we reassure the community and reach as many people as we can whilst meeting the demands and the priorities that affect the communities most. Could I have the next slide, please? So this is really more my personal aim in line with everything else that we do, but it's to be proactive in what we do. It's about not sitting and reacting and responding. And again, Dave mentioned this around the cost of being reactive and having to investigate things. And it's about being out there on the front foot. It's about being out there as a cure rather than being the cure. It's about being preventative. It's about making sure that we stop people from coming to harm rather than have to investigate the crime where they have been harmed. This is about tackling community priorities on the front foot as well. And some of the work we've been doing recently with the cohesion panel with Adam and myself and Marek around trying to build a cohesive sort of panel where we can bring these anxieties and address them is an important piece of work that we're doing as well. That's the end of my presentation. I hopefully haven't gone on too much. There's lots of hands. Okay.
What I'm saying, it is questions this evening, please. Right, Councillor Masood is saying.
Yes, okay, you'll get my name right.
I'm losing the plot here.
Don't make it controversial, please. Right. Can I, in light of the debate earlier on, I'm not going to prolong. I'll just get to the point. First, in communication. There are a lot of positive and congratulations in some of the crime reduction, particularly those burglaries and some of the serious crime that really communicating to the public and getting the public's confidence, because there is a perception versus reality. Yeah, people's fear of crime is more than it is actual crime. So how do we do that? Not only the council, but you yourself, because people would coming from you would have more effective. Number one. Number two, I would say to you that, now that you've got a number of community support officers, I challenged the police commissioner before that I think we ought to be, they should be deployed where the greatest need rather than what is political convenience. And you don't need to answer it. Neither am I expecting the Deputy Commissioner to answer that. But what I'm saying is that human intelligence is far better than some of the cameras and others. But we don't see any of the community support officers, say in Farley or say in other wards. So can we get some sort of, priority given in terms of where there is a crime, more crime, the drugs are the serious issues. It's a national issue, but locally people see things, but they're afraid to report it to you. But they will talk to a community support officer to give them the information. So can we please get some community support officers where there's a greatest drug dealing going on in Luton? Thank you very much. I won't prolong it.
Okay, no, thank you. Just to absolutely we'll take on board what you say about the feeling of being safe as well, and that with Project Firefly that I mentioned, the focus is very much not just around making people safe, actually safe, but also allowing people to feel safe, because they're almost as important, I would say. In terms of the PCSOs, they are out there. We focus their patrols where there is serious crime, whether it's serious youth violence or the drug hotspots. They are out there. We have obviously the challenge of coverage and visibility over demand. But where we have them allocated to areas, and they are allocated to every area, they do focus their patrols in those areas to try and reassure people as much as they can. I've had this is the age-old problem where I've seen it. And we've had I've had people at community priority setting meetings saying, well, I never see a police officer or PCSO. Never see, and I said, well, you live just next door to the police station, so we walk on foot patrols past your door tens of times a day, but they don't see them because their kitchen and their lounge is at the back of the house, and so they're never, unless they're coming out their front door and they happen to go in. And so there is that. I'm not sure how we overcome that, but we are out there. And we try and communicate that through the police.uk, what our challenges are, what we're achieving, and allowing people to have their say through various means as well as the setting meetings. So we're doing what we can. Thank you.
Can I also say, I've had a couple of phone calls from residents saying such and such a house, there's drug dealing, which I've passed on to the local police, which has been, they fed that into the network.
That's right.
So, as I say, we can, if they don't want to talk to the police, they can talk to us. As I say, I've had 2 residents come to me, in fact.
Chair, may I make a comment, if I may? Councillor did allude to...
It's got to be very brief.
More than happy to make it brief.
Time, and when we start asking questions, it can take some time.
No. So, you alluded to officers going where the need is. Officers are directed by the Chief Constable and his team, but they do look at heat maps, they do look at where that workload is. Okay, and I could go to other, and I do go to other councils, and they say we want them all here as well. But I can assure you, when you look at where most of the officers are deployed, it is in the major conurbations, etc. So that's number one. And in terms of number two, which is numbers of police officers, and I think the Assistant Chief Constable alluded to it earlier on. We've got more police officers, and we will have more police officers in the next month than we've ever had. But a very large cohort of those are training officers. So it's over 300 and, is that number about 360, I think it is?
When we hit the 1456 number, 404 will be student officers. So that's a third of our constable, a third of our officer workforce will be student officers.
So that's under 2 years service, and they're still going through training. But that gives you that vision of what's going to be like as that cohort works its way through the next 2 years. We will have a lot more resource that can work independently, that can go out and they haven't got to be tutored and actually be guided all the time. So I think the future is looking quite bright, even though, having said that, I still believe we're grossly underfunding as a force. And I think a very good question to ask the Chief Constable next week would be, how many more police officers do you think you need?
Thank you. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'll try and be as quick as I can. Well,
it's a question. That's all right.
Well, no, but sometimes you do need to give. I think from our point of view, this is probably our only opportunity that we will get to ask questions of our Bedfordshire Police Force. So I think it is within the context. So, coming to my questions, well, firstly, on the previous point, the previous section, Assistant Chief Constable, I just want to say I was actually very encouraged by some of your responses that you gave. So thank you for that. Which I think I should have said one or two things that I'd said previously within this particular section. I mean, I, for one, the community policing team that work closely with me in South Ward and obviously in other areas, they are incredibly brilliant. I mean, they are stretched, but never, and I've actually been out on patrols with them. And I would encourage, colleagues to do that, because you get to see what they do and also the challenges they face. And time and time again, the main challenge is around resources. So, which is why I'm asking. But I think my question was, on the point of resourcing, which I asked in my previous question, the reason why I asked that was because, we obviously, every area is allocated a team that they deal with in terms of the community policing team, but we seem to see a change in numbers and a change in people. So that's why I asked the question in my previous, in the previous paper that was submitted as to, can we try and ensure that the officers that are actually in the ranks, that they have that experience, and then that the gap is filled, when obviously, you can't help people from wanting to progress in their careers and so on. So from our point of view, it's about ensuring stability to ensure that that gap is actually filled. So what are you doing in regard to that?
Well, I think I 100% agree. And if any area in policing needs stability, it's community policing. And it goes back to what I said earlier about relationships and building trust within their communities and the people they speak to. If it's a different face every time, then that relationship isn't there and takes time to build again. So where we have done in the past, due to restructuring and things like that, we've posted people into community policing because that was the way to put people in there quick. Obviously, that means that people are there as for a variety of reasons, but have aspirations elsewhere, and then that churn starts. Where we've gone in the last few recruitment rounds is to be really explicit, to say what we want, and we're putting a tenure on it as well, to say you've got to be here for a while. But what we want is people who want to be here. This is the job. Come and find out what it is before you join us. And then apply, so you understand what you're applying for, and that seems to be building on our stability. We've got, the teams we've got now are really starting to be stable, and we're building on that. And I'm trying to keep that momentum in filling those spaces. So,
Councillor, if I may, Alex and his superintendent Jackie Whitford are always banging on my door for more cops to fill community policing, and we are committed to community policing. We see the value of it. We've recognised the value of it. However, what I will say to Alex and Jackie and the rest of the organisation is that if we have to prioritise somewhere, when people are in need and they call 999, we have to answer that call. And if that is a genuine emergency and requires an immediate response, we have to respond to that call. So our priority at the moment will be our control room, which is predominantly police staff, but then our response patrol function, which works 24/7, because we need to attend those incidents which are an emergency.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And then I also want to obviously pay tribute here to the Town Centre Community Policing team, because they are just as brilliant.